Just checking if you guys can hear me before I get started. You can? Great. Awesome, okay. Hello and welcome to another episode of Money Talks with me, 𝕄𝕆𝕆ℕ from 𝕄𝕆𝕆𝕕. Today we're going to be talking about Cineworld again and the weekly live stream. And I promise in the future it'll be more slick. I was actually getting popcorn, so I've got this now. And so I do make slicker videos than this, but it's nice to also just share facts without having to worry about loads of snappy editing, which takes me a lot of time. I really enjoyed chatting to all of you guys on Reddit, and I think over the last few weeks I've been getting a little bit more bullish on this stock, but obviously there's people out there that will rightly point out that we've got to be sensible to some degree. But I mean, if you look at other businesses, and that's what we're going to go into today, Hertz, the power that we have when we actually start buying stocks, it can really turn the tables for these companies. And when they're managed well, they can really take these tools into their hands and change the business around. So I think a great example is Hertz. On my last stream, called them 𝕄𝕆𝕆ℕ, a different company. We're talking about Hertz that filed for bankruptcy, I think, in 2020. And they, I think, are the best comparison to make to Cineworld. So we're going to get into that in this episode. Also, people that are looking for Q2 earnings. I put the link in Reddit, but I'll put the link in the description on this video. Also, here's the link on the screen. You can go to, and I've talked about it in my last week's live stream, these are the earnings. It's on the Cineworld website, but you can go to their RNS page and you can go to this, and this is their cash flow forecast. This actually gives you more detail than you would typically get in H1 earnings. You get the actual month by month cash flow of Cineworld here, so you can actually see exactly how much cash they had every month, which isn't something that you typically get. I mean, unless they give it to you voluntarily. So this, if you remember in last week's episode, we looked at this cash flow, we worked out how useful the 500 million was going to be for them. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about Hertz, and then also Cineworld have this investor presentation that they put up when they filed for bankruptcy. And so I thought it would be fun for us to all go through that together, give my thoughts on it. I'd be interested in reading your comments as well. I've also got Dr. Pepper and a beer here as well, as it's near the end of the week, so why not? So let's get started. I've got this question on Cineworld's page. Are we going to see zero movement or stabilization or horizontal line at 3p until the 30th of September when earnings report comes out? Or is some big movement in the making? So this is the first comment I had ahead of the video. Please leave comments on my comments on Reddit, and I will put them at the top of my priority list. But I think because we know what the earnings are in H1 in more detail than we would ever normally get, no, the stock is not going to move dramatically in any direction based on the earnings that come out on the 30th of September. Whether other news comes out in that time, we don't know. That could affect the stock, but at the moment, no, earnings will have no impact because we actually have more information than that earnings will actually tell us. We actually know what the earnings are in July, so that's after the H1 earnings. So we have a more accurate idea of what the earnings of Cineworld are now than that earnings is going to tell us. I expect the price to not change very much in the meantime. So in the last episode, we talked about how is Cineworld's cash supply, can Cineworld survive bankruptcy, and what could the outcome be what could the outcome of dilution be? And then what I wanted to get into was what happened in the Hertz Chapter 11 filing, because I think that's actually the best thing to give us an indication on these other three questions, is what happened when another company similar to Cineworld, not in terms of product but in terms of financial situation, goes through bankruptcy. So here is the latest article about this Hertz situation. by Forbes how Hertz went from bankrupt to buying 100,000 Teslas. And it really is quite an impressive story of how Hertz came to be here, and it was all thanks to, really, in part, I believe, its retail investors that are to thank for Hertz's situation at the minute. So let's go into a little bit about how bad it was for Hertz. So I've actually got their filings here, and it's a bit hard to see. I've not gone into terrible detail on the financials of Hertz, but they were in around 18 billion of debt. So they had balance sheet. I don't really like doing this because there's so many different types of debt, but they had long-term debt of 16 billion in 2018. 22 billion here of debt, which is an awful lot. And then they had rapidly growing short-term debt. And what was also happening was they had the COVID pandemic, which suppressed their earnings a lot. So their overview, they had sort of 8 to 9 to 10 billion in revenue, and then suddenly 2020 rolls around and they have 5 billion in revenue. And so, yeah, that was a big knock to them. And then what actually happened was they saw this sort of comeback. They filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, the CEO quit, and there's actually more to this. Let's go back to here. The key moments for Hertz was on May 22nd, the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, listing 18 billion in debt on that day. Shortly after that, Carl Icahn sold his 39% stake. So that took a massive hit to the share price. Obviously, he had an enormous stake. I'm quite surprised that he sold such a big stake in Hertz for 72 cents per share. So remember that. He sold his stake, 39%, for 72 pence per share. As you can imagine, after that, the market was flooded with his shares, taking a $2 billion loss. Then a funny thing happened. Retail investors started flocking to Hertz stock. For whatever reason, the result was Hertz shares soared 1,000%. And this is while they were filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which is crazy. So they were literally they were in the bankruptcy filing process, the same process that Cineworld are now in, and their shares rose 1,000% in the span of 2 weeks, climbing from as low as 59 cents per share up to $5.50. And so what is the reason for this? Where are Hertz now? I don't know if I put it in here on these slides, but essentially this was due to retail investors flocking to the stock, but also they then used this high share price and sold. You can actually see it here in their balance, their cash flow statement. You can go to on their key ratios page on QuickFS. This is a site I really recommend. You can go to their diluted shares, and you can see they sold 28.2%, and so they and then this helped strengthen their balance sheet and allowed for a bidding war for the business. And then, so where are Hertz now? Well, when Hertz began the process of looking for a new investment to bring the company out of bankruptcy, it had no shortage of suitors. And I think that will be similar to Cineworld. If Cineworld start looking for a savior, which I don't think they will, I think they'll have no shortage of suitors. I mean, I can imagine Warner Bros. Discovery wanting to buy this, Disney wanting to buy this, and various other companies would definitely be interested in holding Cineworld. AMC would definitely be interested in buying this. So a bidding war developed, and when the dust settled this May, the winners agreed to furnish Hertz with 5.9 billion in new capital, while slashing the 5 billion of its debt. While slashing off 5 billion of its debt load. The deal also called for the owners of Hertz equity to receive as much as $8 per share. So yeah, if Cineworld goes to the market, which I don't think it's going to do, but in the process of this arbitration, if shareholders were to get nothing, first the company would be sold, and in Hertz's situation, they got $8 per share when it was as low as 59p several months earlier. So that is, let me just try and work out $5.50 divided by 59 cents. So yeah, that's around 900% increase. So it's possible that the same thing would happen to us in the event of Cineworld actually going bankrupt. Although I don't think that's the most likely outcome here. But another thing to note is one thing that would definitely help Cineworld is all of us coming together, buying up sensible amount of shares, acknowledging it's a risk, but being willing to take on that chance. That bit of American optimism I think is needed here. It certainly has worked well for AMC and GameStop. Although the GameStop one was a really unicorn event, that was being so crazy shorted. In this event, Cineworld, the shorters have almost entirely pulled out, as far as I'm aware. So I'm just going to. So the next thing is, I think that covers it for Hertz stock. That is exactly the sort of situation that Cineworld is in, and now they're in a situation where they are going to be buying 100,000 Teslas. Whether that will happen, we do not know, but I'm sure that Elon Musk and Hertz want that to happen. It's certainly, both companies have said this is a done deal and it will happen. And so that would be interesting. I'd love to rent a Tesla. It's a shame that I won't be able to do that in the UK. And so the next thing I want to talk about is this presentation that Cineworld put together for their bankruptcy filing. And so this is, when I was reading through this, I thought it was quite funny. I can't believe how sort of light-hearted they made this bankruptcy filing document. It's kind of a weird one. So yeah, it starts off with the storyboard, which is just saying, yeah, this is the contents page. You've got the cast and crew, the opening, the plot twist, the action, and the end. So this is super interesting document. So the cast and crew, you got our hero, 𝕄𝕆𝕆𝕕. I'm sorry, I really need to learn how to say that name. And more executive chairs. But yes, 𝕄𝕆𝕆𝕕, 20% stakeholder, like us, he's one of us. He's still holding. He seems just as calm as ever every time I've seen him. And all of his statements seem very relaxed, and I don't think he will be willing to give up any of his stake. And then next you've got the cast and crew directors. This stuff isn't particularly interesting. You've got the film crew. Right, let's get into the meaty part of this document, the opening. You've got the corporate history, where you learn about where Cineworld's humble origins back in the 1930s. And you get to see 𝕄𝕆𝕆𝕄𝕆𝕆's father, I presume, opening in the 1930s, and then growing through 1982, 2014, all the way up to 2022. And then COVID hit. Scary COVID. And you've got the corporate history here. This stuff is interesting, but not that interesting. I have read through this, but it's just, I don't know, it's interesting, but yeah, this is where it starts to get more interesting. You've got somewhere, this page here, global platform business overview. This is all the screens around the world, and you get to see how much of the business that the United States now takes up since they bought Regal. So basically, the United States takes up basically all the other cinemas around the world combined. So whenever you see, by the way, rest of ROW, that's rest of world business. And so yeah, 129, and then add up all of these, and it's about the same as you have in the entirety of America. So America being shut down has an enormous impact on Cineworld. but also you get to see the impact around the rest of the world. And so what you've got, if you scroll down, there's some really interesting pages here. There's revenue by operating segment. I found this really interesting because you don't always get to see this in their annual reports. And so you get to see how much money they make from box office sales. And so this is the importance of having really big blockbusters. I saw someone comment on my eToro page that Cineworld make their money from like the retail, so that's the popcorn and Coke. They certainly do. They definitely need that money. They make 31% of their revenue from that. But no, they need big blockbusters. 53% of their revenue comes from the box office. So when films like Black Panther and Avatar do very well, then their box office, the majority of their income, will grow by a significant portion. And that's why these film releases are going to be the significant event in these bankruptcy filings. They are going to be what tells us what the long-term outcome of Cineworld is going to be like. And then also you get to see again, that's the revenue of the US versus the UK and the rest of the world. Although actually what's happening at the minute, the strengthening of the dollar, again, if Cineworld does well, they will be extremely well off in the US dollar. So actually there's more economic things that come into this. This US segment doing well will make them extremely able to pay off debt in the rest of world regions, the UK and the rest of the world. It'll make operating those very, very cheap. A lot of businesses do not have this sort of US cash flow, US dollar cash flow. Okay, so now we are in, that's the capital structure. So that actually this is quite fascinating. You get to see how the different loans they have and how much of a portion they make up of the debt and stuff like that, worth looking through. I'll leave a link to this document in the description. And non-debtor financing facilities, boring. Scroll through this. It's just, they have a very, well, I think it's quite complicated corporate structure. I haven't looked at many companies' corporate structure, but this is them trying to explain it. But I think they're just showing how complicated it really is. And then the plot twist. So, causes of Chapter 11. And I think this is really important. This is something that I see the most, I hate this term, fake news about online. Like, this is because cinema is dying. You can argue that, but I can point to evidence that cinema has been growing for 10 years. And a lot longer than that, and through recessions. I can point to evidence that actually in recessions people go to the cinema more at times. And so the causes of Chapter 11 I actually definitely agree with Cineworld on. Movie crowds stay away theatres and hope and then they hope it's not for good, la-di-da-di-da. So these are the news articles that were coming out at the time. But this is the crazy thing, seeing this here. So you get to see the amount of screens closed around the whole of the world. So it would be interesting to see this in one line, so how many screens were closed worldwide at a given time. But this is them having 100% closed, and this is, so this is 100% closed, and this is 100% open. And so you can see here that you had basically 100% open, almost. China was shut, and Asia was 70% shut. And then you've got this period here where they're making no money, and then they're gradually able to make more money. You've got Bond films coming out and stuff here, and then you've got closures again here by the end of, did they put the years on this? Yeah, by the end of 2020. So this is really fascinating to see, and you get to see that Asia Pacific never really came back, and a lot of these countries, even though Western Europe started closing down loads. Anyway, sorry, it's just interesting seeing when they closed and opened. This is definitely one of the ones really worth looking at. But you get to see that there's still a lot of disruption here at the end of 2020. Box office revenue in Canada. By the way, leave your questions in the comment section. I'd love to do my best to try and answer them. I'm very bad. I hate because if I get a fact wrong or anything like that, I can't correct it. So I do find this challenging. But if you're enjoying it, please leave the like. If you're enjoying it, please hit the like button. Right, the plot twist. I see. This is just such a weirdly I need to look at more of these documents, but I can't believe there's kind of a production value to the presentation that Cineworld have put forward here. It's really well laid out. And just kind of might not be the most appropriate word, but kind of campy document with the plot twist and the heroes and all of that. So yeah. Continuing plot twist, stock price 92% decrease, we know about that. The revenue 80% decrease, adjusted profit and loss 400% decrease. So this is just like the continuous blows to Cineworld. So there's arguments that Cineworld managed the business wrong, but I don't think anyone could have expected this level of battering, and also the executives of Cineworld were working the entire way through the pandemic, and I don't, personally looking at what they received, do not think that had an impact on them going bankrupt. It was minimal relative to the size of their business. Plus they didn't do a dividend or anything like that. So, which would be what Mooki's preference would be, since he owns 20% stake. He would get an enormous dividend, but they've done no dividend. So he's actually just, he has taken a salary, but that is much, much less than he's used to receiving. So yeah, this is an indication of how many people there were, how many people came to the cinema in a given year. You had 275 million in 2019, 54 million in 2020, 95 million in 2021. And in H1 2022, so this is what I mean by you don't need to wait for the earnings release. They've told you what's happening in H1 2022. 80 million people showed up to the box office. And so that year you had Bond and you had Spider-Man, and you also had Christmas. Also, that's the full year. That's the full year for 2021. That's half the year. So you can double that, but then I think you can quadruple that, because I think the films that are coming out in the second half of this year are enormous compared to what happened in the first half of this year. So yeah, you got, what's quadruple that? So 320 million potentially there. If that is quadrupled, that's a very rough estimate, but that could potentially this 2022 year could be more than 2019, potentially, or at least equal to, which would be brilliant, because in 2019 when they did that, they got 1.3 billion in profit. Okay, so yeah, you can see the film releases here. You got A Quiet Place Part 2, No Time to Die, Black Widow. I didn't go to see, and so I'm just saying, by the way, me laughing there is just the fact that these are the biggest films that came out that year. Oh yeah, and this is just showing you how they got delayed. So basically they had these things lined up and then they were coming out here. Basically the only film I could have told you that came out that year was No Time to Die. I completely forgot Black Widow came out. And so then you just get to see how many films were delayed and stuff like that. And you can imagine how disruptive that would have been when you're working, trying to get these films into your cinemas and organise it all. You've got screens across the entire world to manage, and basically your biggest blockbusters are being pulled out all of the time. These, I think, so that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, brilliant film. I think that went straight to streaming, and yeah, so you can see how difficult the time was. But by the way, the straight to streaming thing, that's another argument that people often use against cinema. Disney and other production studios need box office revenue. So this is why I think that they would be competing quite heavily to purchase cinema, is because they actually need those revenues to pay off their debt. The cinema box office revenue is some of the most cash-rich revenue you could possibly have. Comparatively, the cost of just having a streaming service is terrible margins. So yeah, you need box office revenue. So the whole launching straight to streaming thing, you're going to see a return to prioritizing the cinema a bit now, I think, now that most of them have got their users. Okay, so the plot twist, causes of chapter 11. Yeah, we know all of these, I think. Issuance of 230 million convertible bonds due to... So basically they had issuance of 213 million convertible bonds. Basically the... that, I believe, was added financing to help them. So, Cineplex, oh yeah, the Cineplex lawsuit and Regal. So this is a really weird one. I can't believe that how battered this stock has been, but Cineworld pays 170 million to Regal investors unhappy with 2017 buyout. I don't get how Regal investors actually won this lawsuit, because essentially they all agreed to the price of a stock and then later said, I'm not happy with that, give me more money, and they won. So I don't know what the hell happened there. And then the same thing with Cineplex. I mean, they were going into a pandemic and the financing of it completely changed, and yet they won this lawsuit. But I think the appeal has a good chance of being sort of going in Cineworld's favour. But even still, the worst case scenario, that Cineplex get awarded the full 1.24 billion. They only get that money if Cineworld can actually pay it. In the event of Regal, Regal have agreed to delay the payments multiple times because essentially they want to get their money. And so Cineplex will gladly defer the 1.24 million until Cineworld can pay it. The last thing they want is for Cineworld to go bankrupt. So I think this lawsuit has basically zero impact on the stock. It's just one of those things that I think institutional investors can't ignore. It's just a bit threatening to have that looming over the business that you potentially be buying. And so a lot of big institutional investors would like to see that settled. But I think that will get settled outside of court, in my personal opinion. And Cineworld might end up buying Cineplex, which would be an interesting turn of events. That could possibly be the best outcome in this. So the action plan, dip financing. So the lack of context created an urgent and sudden need to access liquidity beginning in early August. As the petition date, the debtors have approximately 4 million cash on hand. That's where I read it. So basically when they filed for bankruptcy in August, that was in the middle of August, and they had a particularly bad beginning of August. Basically no films were released. You had Nope doing pretty terribly, but you had International Cinema Day, which is when Mookie released that statement saying Cineworld overperformed in a big way. It's in the thumbnails of one of my videos. That happened after the filing for bankruptcy. So yeah, they had $4 million of cash on hand. So that will not show in their H1 report. So that is why we actually know more now than we will after September 30th. That's why I don't expect the price to move. And so throughout extensive arm's length negotiations, the debtors have reached an agreement with ad hoc term loan group on the terms of boring. We know a lot about this. I've gone into my other videos, so go watch them if you want. Subscribe if you want more content. This just breaks down the interim basis, 500 million, new money, working capital, and yeah, the borrower is Crown Finance US Incorporated, and yeah, that doesn't offer a lot of new information. So yeah, that's the whole Cineworld presentation. I recommend checking this out and reading it in more detail. But I'm very, again, like just the effort they've gone into in this presentation shows a lot of love for the business and wanting, and knowledge about it. Just this corporate history thing I think is really interesting. I think Mookie is really proud to be the owner of Cineworld, and I can't see an event in which that shareholders lose all their equity and he doesn't also. So unless someone else, and no one's been able to point out to me a way that would happen, so I know that I can show you. This is the tweet from Saba Meddings, who she predicted revealed Cineworld is preparing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the US as soon as tonight or tomorrow, and they did. But then she also commented, hard to see how 𝕄𝕆𝕆 will find a role to stay beyond the Chapter 11. This is where I disagree with her. I think most people are in support of 𝕄𝕆𝕆, most shareholders are in support of 𝕄𝕆𝕆, given the fact that they like to see someone owning such a, see the person running the business having such an enormous stake. I think it's impressive that he's still buying up cinemas as in his 70s. And I think that he's done a good job of Cineworld so far. He's certainly grown it over the last 10 years. He's done a lot of impressive work, and yeah, I want to see him continue to hold it. I think everyone does, and as we've seen with Hertz, you can come back from Chapter 11 filings. I think actually the thing that happened to Hertz is the more likely situation, or not saying that they will be bought out. I think they will just generate enough cash flow to get out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing altogether. They'll be able to pay off all their debts with Avatar. But I think the idea that shareholders would get wiped out when you really look down to it, albeit a possibility that is unappetizing for a lot of large institutional investors, is very unlikely. And so we as retail investors able to play around with smaller amounts of money can take on this risk, and I think it's worth it. Let me know what you think about this, and I'm just reading the comments. Doesn't look like there's any questions to be had right now, so I hope you enjoyed this video. I am going to go finish my dinner, finish my popcorn, watch a film, and yeah, chat to you next week. Please come back again.